Because right now there are two big camps in the world of science that believe that consciousness is either a product of our brain that is a emergent property of the complex system of our brain creating a simulated consciousness, and that consciousness isn't real. It's just a function of what the brain does when you leave a brain to do stuff for 2 billion years. The other side of that is there is a belief that consciousness is fundamental to physics and fundamental to our existence. And consciousness is part of the underlying substrata that creates all of the stuff that surrounds us, including our own existence and including our own agency. So this side and this side has been in a big argument for the longest time, and no one has had any evidence to disprove one side or the other. That is no longer correct. So this side got a big boost in its argument when there was a study done, and the problem with psychological studies, let's take a half step back. The problem with psychological studies in history has been that you never know what a result says, right? You never know what a result either proves or disproves in psychology. And this is true of medicine as well. It's tough to get anything close to a 6 sigma significance of proof because there's always the subjectivity of the individual being measured. There's always the subjectivity of the interaction between the investigator and the subjects, et cetera. There's all kinds of fuzziness. There's all kinds of uniqueness of an individual and its quirks and their psychology, et cetera. And so they never were able to figure out a way to measure a human being with just measuring the human being and not in being, muddied by all these other factors where, being individual humans makes us unique. So what they did is they figured out a study to do a computer system controlling a study and an individual sitting in the chair of the computer system. And originally, they just wanted to figure out whether putting a primer in front of a picture can either delay or increase the speed at which a human makes a decision. Now, let me explain that so we can take all the fuzziness out of the confusion that I just laid on everybody. So what the computer would do, ultimately, on the control group, it would show a picture of a kitty. You're just sitting there at a computer screen, and it would flash you a picture of a kitty. And then from there, a second later, it would say, okay, I'm going to give you 2 words, a binary choice, 50-50. You either believe this kitty is cute or you believe it's ugly. We want you to click on the one or the other. And then that's it. That was the control group's only task, is to look at the kitty or whatever the picture was. It was out of a standardized database. And then it looked at the distractors who were also matched to the picture, also randomized by the computer, also selected from an approved database. Says, oh, cute or ugly. And then it would measure to the 100th of a second how quick it took you to make that choice. So that's the control group. Then on the second group, they said, okay, so the computer's going to run the same set of variables. It's going to run the same data, except this time, before we show you the kitty, we're going to flash 1/30th of a second in front of you, one of the distractors that we're going to give you later. So before we give you the picture of the kitty, we're going to flash cute or ugly. Then we're going to show you the kitty. And then we're going to give you the selection, because our brains are not quick enough to pick up 1/30th of a second on anything, but our subconscious is. So when we flash 1/30th of a second or something, our regular waking awareness doesn't pick it up, but our subconscious does. Our subconscious doesn't miss anything. So it'll see the cute or ugly flashed here, even though we don't. They'll flash the picture, and then they'll see if there's a delay or an acceleration of whether you pick cute or ugly based on what they flashed beforehand. And what they found didn't surprise anybody. When they flashed ugly before the kitty, it took you longer to pick cute or quicker to pick ugly. If they flashed ugly, like if you're a cat hater and you hate cats, all cats are ugly. So you say, oh, okay. If it flashed cute beforehand and they showed you the kitty, you were able to pick cute faster. And if you were going to select ugly, it took you longer to select ugly if you're a cat hater. So what they proved was 1/30th of a second influence before they give you the image of the kitty does influence your ability to choose a distractor by a few hundredths of a second. But they showed that a primer before the image compared to the control group does influence a human being. Now, that was the perfect study because it was a computer randomizing everything. It was the computer interacting with the individual, so there's no investigator giving hints or giving clues or giving answers or whatever that could be fuzzied. And the computer's measuring down to 1/100th of a second how quick the person is selecting. And they can do it just over and over and over and over and over again. So they got thousands of people doing this. So the more people that you get through a study like that, the easier it is to say, okay, this conclusion makes sense. And over a large sample, we prove something. We prove that humans can be influenced by a primer. Now, what they did to change history is that the folks who were interested in doing a study on precognition, the ability for a human brain to look into the future, there's a whole set of PhDs who are out there trying to figure out how to study this stuff and how to put together studies to measure this stuff. Well, what they did is Daryl Bem took that same exact model that was heralded as the perfect psychological study, and he changed one thing about the solution set. He said, okay, I'm going to take this primer up here that will flash before the picture of the kitty, and I'm going to take it out of that slot, and I'm going to put it down here, and we're going to do it after you have completed the task. So the control group went through just the same as the controlled group did on the first group. They gave them the picture, they gave them the cute and ugly, and they said, okay, we're going to give you the clicks, and you measure that. And they had the control group. The second group, they said, okay, we're going to give you this next set. We're going to show you the kitty. We're going to give you cute and ugly. And then after you have already selected cute or ugly for your kitty, or the color of the bicycle or whatever it is that they've got randomized, we will then flash you afterwards, cute or ugly. And we're going to see if anything happens. Now, from a regular materialist, reductionist perspective, there's absolutely no way that flashing a primer after the fact that you've already collected your data and made your choice and completed your action, there's no way.
It's going to influence the outcome.
Right, except it did. And it did to a statistical significance that was beyond 6 sigma, which is the scientific gold standard for proving a phenomenon. Now, let me give you the scope of how influential and how meaningful this result was. Because when they flashed the picture, they gave you the cute and ugly, and then they gave you the primer afterwards. The people not only were delayed or accelerated in making their choice, they were accelerated or retarded in the correct way. In that, if this flashed ugly after the fact, it took you longer to select cute. If it flashed cute after the fact, it took you longer to select ugly. And they did this through one study, which was amazing, and they got the results that they expected. But then they did it 90 more times in 33 different labs in 14 different countries, and they got the same results every single time. That is a scientific phenomenon at that point. When you can take thousands of people and run them through the same process and show that they're being delayed or accelerated in selecting a primer or selecting a distractor after being shown a picture, and then the primer shows up after the fact, that is proving one of two things. One, that the human brain can look into the future and see the primer after the fact, and it then influences your action previous at time one, before you even see the primer. That's what that's proving. Or it's proving that you can go through and your mind will keep track of how you've been delayed or accelerated on selecting a primer, and then you influence the computer on giving you the correct distractor. So pick your weird beyond the through the looking glass poison on that one, because one of the two absolutely proves psychic ability and precognition, and the other proves a type of a telekinesis or a manipulation of an electronic circuit through consciousness.